How?
I realized when my ex-wife was pregnant with our first child that it was this jealousy, that there was this experience that she had that I was never going to have. And that really was what started opening the door for me to start kind of exploring those feelings and being like, where is this coming from? This doesn't make sense. I started to come to terms with my identity and who I was. Realizing that was such a weight off my shoulders, but then everything that followed, a lot of people made me feel like I was going to lose my daughter. Like...
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, no worries.
You're good.
I'll move, though, dude. No worries.
All right. Anyway, we were talking about your trauma. I think that for any art form, but for food in particular, the best case scenario is when it's created by somebody who sees it as an extension of themselves and a way for them to share that with you. And I think that Hot Mess might be the best example of that I have ever seen. It's the most requested place for people who live here locally, and I'm just getting to it now, not for a lack of trying. A little bit of a lack of trying. And I've known the owner for a really long time. We grew up in the same church. We were in the same scout troop. We went to summer camps together. We even grew up in the same neighborhood right down the street. Her stepdad was my guitar teacher very briefly, and my mom was their real estate agent when they moved to a different part of town. And after that, we just more or less lost touch. I would run into her occasionally at the lawless hellscape that is Winco, and I would follow what she was doing on social media. And when I saw that she was starting Hot Mess, my first thought was that was a brave thing to do because restaurants are notoriously difficult. And I'll admit that I was a little bit surprised when I saw that they were growing, that they were becoming successful and generating a legitimate local following. And then I saw some other changes that started to happen in her life, and I realized that I should have never been surprised in the first place because there was more bravery in her than I was aware of. And also, I may have never known her at all until today.
So about 9 years ago, I was an alcoholic. I was drinking every night, and at one point I went to a bar. I was meeting up with a chef friend and a couple of other chefs, and we were all going to, chat about the industry. And as I did at the time, I showed up about 45 minutes before everybody else was supposed to be there to get a couple of sheets to the wind. And I had not met most of these other chefs that we were going to be hanging out with. And they had shown up, and I overheard them talking at the table. And they're saying, oh, the chef from Fat Olives is coming tonight. I hear if he wasn't such a hot mess, he'd really give us all a run for our money. And so at that point, I knew that whatever business I was going to start, I was going to name it Hot Mess. But I'd always dreamed of having a burger place ever since I moved to the Tri-Cities. I got my first job at a restaurant in town that the patties came in frozen and pre-cooked. And we microwaved them, and we'd send these out to customers, and I would have customers tell me that this was the best burger they've ever eaten. And it was then that I knew that someday I was going to have to bring a burger shop to the Tri-Cities, because those were definitely not the best burgers they should have ever had. Me and my business partner Ben, we have 40 years of fine dining experience, and we decided it's hilarious to bring that level of skill and that much knowledge of food and preparation stuff to our burgers, a fast food burger truck. So yeah, we push out burgers in 10 minutes like any other burger place, but that's because we spend 8 hours beforehand. We make our ketchup from scratch. We make our own American cheese. We make the buns fresh every single morning. And it's funny to me. It's funny to me to put that much skill, not into some fancy sounding halibut dish that, You spend 6 hours with a little tweezer putting flowers in just the right spot, but into a burger that gets wrapped up in foil and sent out in a brown paper bag.
It's been a little different being a food truck here in the Tri-Cities, but the community has been fantastic. We got broken into not long ago, and I can't tell you the amount of new people that I've never met before that reached their hand out in kindness just to help us out. These people that they barely knew just makes me feel that even though this is a growing community, it's still a small community where people take care of each other. Recently, my business partner came out as trans, and that was a little bit of a difficult conversation for us here in the Tri-Cities. But we really feel like, just like anybody else in their life just wants to get out there and live their own genuine self. That's how you feel the best about yourself and feel the most loved. We were a little apprehensive to come out here in the Tri-Cities, but we've experienced a little bit of hate over it as expected, but what we didn't expect was the amount of love, the amount of acceptance, the amount of people that came by, just random old ladies that you'd see, came by to give Cara a hug, tell us congratulations, thank you for stepping out. I've got somebody in my own family that is trans and is afraid to talk about their experience, and just to see that really makes me proud about where I'm at. It really does. I know for some people that might be maybe a point of shame or something like that, but really in life, it's just best to lead by love, really, and that's what we're trying to do over here.
I mean, obviously, in the age that we grew up, the most representation that you would see of trans people would be on Ace Ventura or Dude, Where's My Car as the butt end of a joke, and it's hard to associate with those representations of the trans community, and it really was more just this, I felt like I didn't belong. I mean, you were my Boy Scout troop leader, which is a very funny thing to sit here and say, but I'm sure you remember, like, you guys were off going and running pranks when we were camping and doing all these things, and I was sitting by the campfire reading books and stuff because I just didn't feel like I belonged. And then as I started going to high school and being around a larger, pubescent audience, there was this draw to spend more time with the girls in girls' spaces, and not. It was always one of those things where it was very confusing because I was not gay. I did not feel a strong attraction to men, and so it's hard to be like, why is it that I like girls but it feels gay to say that? But as I continued growing up and everything, I realized when my ex-wife was pregnant with our first child that it brought a lot of anger to me, and it was this jealousy that there was this experience that she had that I was never going to have, and that really was what started opening the door for me to start kind of exploring those feelings and being like, where is this coming from? This doesn't make sense. I love her. I love the fact that we're going to have a child, we're going to have a family, so it makes no sense that I have all this jealousy and anger surrounding this. I started to come to terms with my identity and who I was, and that was led to the first time that I came out, because I've now come out twice. I went back in the closet for 10 years, and I kind of had accepted at that point that I was going to spend my life, as we say, in boy mode, continuing to masquerade as somebody I truly didn't feel like I was. And then my wife and I, we were working, it was just the two of us on the truck for 2 years, and instead of what happens with a lot of relationships where you butt heads and that can wind up causing the downfall of a divorce, we wound up being closer than we ever were, and surprisingly having another child, which once again brought those feelings back to the surface and was really what kind of broke my egg, as they say, and made me realize I could not continue just living this existence in boy mode, hiding from the truth that I was keeping inside. More noise.
I'm probably editing this video on a plane to Hawaii right now, assuming my children are allowing that to take place. And I think a lot of times when people go on a trip where they're going to spend a lot of time around other people without their shirt on, they do everything that they can to try to look good without their shirt on. But what I've decided to do is not that. Because this is the monster mess from Hot Mess. It's a smash burger with lettuce, pickles, tomato, onions, what they call mess sauce, which is appropriately named, and then just for good measure, it's got an entire fried chicken breast on top of it. And that's all well and good, but it does raise a couple of interesting questions. I had never actually been to Hot Mess until today, but I see pictures of what they make on social media all the time, and every time I see one, it makes me wonder if they have some responsibility for what it is they're putting out into the world. It makes me think about somebody whose arteries are just hanging on by a thread, and something like this is just gonna push them over the edge completely. And it makes you wonder if is Cara responsible for that, or are people responsible for what they decide to put into their own bodies? The question is, does Hot Mess... I don't even know how to... Ooh. So it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. The burger is one of the best burgers I've had maybe ever, and the chicken is cooked perfectly. It is a little bit, it's quite messy, as you might expect. At this point, it is closer to being a salad than being a sandwich. And honestly, I think that might be my favorite thing about it. It obviously does taste good, but there's an element of humor, not just to the food, but to everything that they do. It's just a little bit ridiculous, and I love that. And I also love that I don't have to reach very far for the metaphor here. They've done all of that legwork for me, because sometimes things are just a little bit messy. Sometimes things seem like they're just a little bit over the top, but more often than not, you'll find that you have more in common with those things than you might think at first glance. And even if that isn't the case, it is our differences that make us beautiful. It's our differences that make us interesting. It's our differences that make us delicious. I may have let the metaphor get away from me a little bit there, but you know what I mean. What has support been like within the community?
I mean, it was not as bad as my overthinking, anxiety-ridden brain would make me believe, but that hate is there. It has been very obvious from the get-go why so many other trans people try and stay quiet. They don't want to be seen, to be heard. They want to, as we call, pass. They want to be able to blend in and not be seen as somebody who's othered, but just another woman in society. And it is hard to be like going through a transition and be in this state of flux where every day my face might look a little different, but it's still there, and you're in this alien place. And so to be able to still post my face as the owner of this business and share my story and be vulnerable and put all of that out there, it's difficult. But our LGBTQ scene in the Tri-Cities, that community has really, it struck a chord with them, and they've discovered our truck, and we're now seen as a safe place for so many marginalized people. And so before my transition, before I came out publicly, I had actually never had the chance to sit across the table and talk to another trans person. And since coming out, I have met so many of us in the Tri-Cities that it is kind of, it's reassuring that there are more of us than people would like us to know. There's a larger community than we think that there is in the Tri-Cities, not just trans people, but the gay community, the LGBTQ community at large has a strong presence in this community, but they're scared, and because that they don't come together enough to be heard and be seen. And so it's a really empowering feeling to kind of start something with that, to find this community that I didn't know. Like, I stayed in the closet for so long because I didn't know that there is enough of us around here to be strong and to support each other. And so the hate has been hard, but I get to share the strength of so many other trans people and LGBT community now, that it's a lot easier, and it makes me very proud to be where I am and to be seen, and to try and create that safe space of my business for this marginalized community.